Hi, welcome to the System Club, and this is our master class session. Every month we talk to somebody who's doing remarkable, important things in either business at large, marketing in general, or internet marketing specifically. And this is a great call because it's a continuation of something that we've done in the past. Today our guest is David Rothwell, and he is a System grad, he is a System Club member, and he is a System Club faculty member. So he has the full trifecta of system affiliation. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
And it's later in the UK than it is here. What time is it where you are?
Yes, it's 8 p.m.
Ah, okay. Was it about a year ago or a year and a half ago that you came to me with tell me about a project that you're working on relating to AdWords and selling physical products?
Yeah, I think it was about a year and a half ago. Seems to have gone by real fast.
It always does.
Yeah.
It always. Somewhere, I believe, in our archive, in our calls with Ken section, you can actually find the call that we did with David. And make a long story short, he had just put together a book on the subject of using AdWords specifically for physical products. And I thought, wow, this is a really good niche. And we batted around some ideas and some things that he could do to take advantage of that very unique positioning. Did Perry ever do anything with you on that?
He did a foreword for the book, and he's recently done me a little video testimonial, but we haven't done anything jointly together. I think he's just been really, really busy with everything that's going on in his world.
Yeah, but the principle was, hey, if you've got something specialized in a big market that nobody else has, pour it on, let's fire up all the jets. And David has done some very specialized research and practical experimentation in using AdWords to sell physical products. And one of the payoffs is he's just been invited to be a guest speaker at an upcoming Google event. Tell our fellow club members about that.
Yeah, that's right. So I've been a Google agency partner for quite a few years, and to be honest, it's not really gone that terribly far in terms of anything sort of jointly. They've always been there to support us and so forth. Google have strengthened their agency partner model and relationships over the years, and to cut a long story short, I inherited a new one. So the guy who'd been my partner relationship manager never really did much with me, but then he moved on and he was replaced by a very interesting lady who got in touch with me, and we started talking about everything that I was doing specifically in the e-commerce physical products sales area. And she was very interesting because she really understood it very quickly, and partly that's because her background is actually from being on the agency side of things. So she's been on both sides of the fence, so she understands more about what agencies get up to and what makes them different and how they behave and all that sort of thing. So I got into sort of bringing her up to speed with everything that we were doing and giving her some of the journey of it all, and she just really was very, very interested by it. And so over time she was interested to see whether or not, of course Google wants to nurture their relationships with agencies so that they get more business, obviously. So that was her main reason for it. But she was much more proactive about the whole thing. And the more I spent time, talking to her about what we were doing and why and who we were doing it for and who we weren't doing it for and all of that, she just got really, really interested. So the upshot of that was that she was in one of the London HQ offices, and I went along and sort of pitched her with, this is what we're all about, and would you like us to do an event with you, and could you host it, and would you be willing to do that? And she was very interested to do that, and so we set a date, and we've got a room at Google's London office, and we're going to get people there, and they're going to stand up and do their intro from the agency side of things, and then it's up to us after that. We are partnering with a website development company who specialise in e-commerce as well, and they're doing a little session during our thing. But we'll be there in just over a week's time, and we're getting people along to it, and we're real interested to see where it could take us.
Great, such a fantastic credential, and it's not necessarily so that simply putting on this event is going to be a life-changing thing, but it gives you a life-changing credential because, in marketing, whether you're marketing a product or your own services, you really need to have hooks for people to hang their mental hats on. It's like, who is David Rothwell? And now, among all the other things you can say, we presented, we just did a conference with Google on our work. So tell people about, you do a couple of really important things. One is you've got a performance-based Google AdWords offering, and then second, you've worked on developing ways to use Google AdWords specifically for physical products. So let's catch people up on what where you started, and then let's talk a little bit about the new focus.
Right. So as probably most folks do who get into this whole AdWords PPC thing, I mean, to start with, you're just trying to figure it out, and you're pretty much doing work that you can do for people. Most of the time, you're always going to be doing it better than they are because they don't. It's complicated, and they don't really know, and they can't spend the time to figure it out. So I got started back in 2005. So that's like 11 years now, and so my first ever client was a lady in real estate in Houston, which was interesting, and I had to figure out how much to ask her to pay me and how to take the money off her. So PayPal to the rescue. So it was very much in those early starting days working with lead gen, B2B type clients, and I worked in all manner of different industries, as listed as just huge different sorts of industries that were doing all this. And I was learning it and getting paid for it and getting better and just finding it all the more fascinating all the time. And, excuse me, then about, I think it was in late 2013, I'd been doing some work with a couple of e-commerce clients, and they were just pretty much part of the bag of stuff that I was doing. But then I realized that not only was it so drastically easier to understand what the point of a conversion was in a campaign. In other words, a lead is a useful thing to have, but often you don't really understand the true value of it. It can vary and it can take a long time to close, and you're never there at the point where the money changes hands in lead generation, which is very, very frustrating. And the thing I like to see is the value of what I'm doing. And over the years, because clients don't really, in lead gen, clients don't really understand the value of the clicks that they're buying and the leads they're getting. It just means that it's really very difficult, if not impossible, to really manage things cost effectively for them. So they pull out, they stop doing it, they try and reduce the spend, reduce the click costs and the CPA and so forth, and it's just very, very frustrating. So because I then started to get some experience with e-commerce merchants, we could not only see sales conversions, but Google put up a new thing, which was a thing called transaction-specific conversion tracking, where they allowed you to do some programming on the website so that you could see the value of the sale, the actual revenue value of the sale, as it changed hands. So you could see all the usual things, impressions, clicks, etc., but not only could you see the sales conversions, but you could actually see the monetary value of them in dollars and cents. So with that, I could see a couple of things that changed my perspective on it. One was that we could now really prove the value of what the spend was to what the revenue was, and also that can be unpredictable, because when you work into like a lead gen situation of CPA, you've got a target that you want to spend this amount of money on leads, and that's your kind of target, and often it's arbitrary, but that's what people work with. But with physical product sales, then because you could see the revenue, I mean, people don't always buy what they come to your site to buy. Sometimes they spend less, sometimes they spend the same, sometimes they spend more. We all do that all the time. We all go to Amazon and, we might be looking for something, we end up buying something different. But then, because that's variable and flexible, you need to know what it is, because the CPA target that you're working to is not necessarily representative of what you're actually earning in return. So that was a really important sort of understanding. And from there I could see, well, okay, now that we can see which pieces of the campaigns are actually working for us in terms of spending money and getting money back, and we could figure out this thing called return on ad spend, which is basically your revenue divided by your cost. And we could start seeing return on ad spend of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or greater. You know, in other words, put $1 in, and if the return on ad spend is 5, you get $5 back. So then you can start chipping away. You can see where the money's going, and you can see where it's coming back in. You can start chipping away at all the bits that aren't making you money, like maybe mobiles aren't bringing you the right revenue, or maybe locations, or days of the week, or all the moving parts inside the campaigns. You could then look at them in terms of what they were doing in terms of return on ad spend. So then you can start reducing the waste. So firstly, we say, well, firstly, we can actually show you the money now because we can track the revenue. Secondly, we can stop wasting money, which is just being thrown away, that's just not getting any return for you. And then, of course, you'll want to be able to make more money if you can. So now how do we push these things harder where they are working to go as flat out as possible and buy everything we can because it's working? So that was those are all the realizations I had about all this, and I started doing this for clients, and you could just start building campaigns as machines, as little black boxes that you put $1 in, and you just keep getting more dollars out.
Great, and you put all this into a book.
Yes, I originally I realized I had to start getting some of this stuff out of my head into a book so that people could look at it if they wanted to, and it helped me to organize everything. And so I started putting the book together, and it took me a lot longer than I thought it was going to. And I'd done it, and I put it around to a few people just to get feedback and comments and so forth from. And you gave me a few nice words about it. Perry did, Brian Todd did, and Brian was really interesting because he said to me when he'd read it, he said, you've got a lot of stuff in here, but it does seem to be quite e-commerce related. And I said, well, yeah, it is pretty much. It's very much about e-commerce. And he said, well, there's lots, really quite, well, there's other books out there about AdWords, but they're all kind of general purpose, whereas this is very specifically about one thing, and that's just e-commerce. And I said, yeah, you're right. He said, well, okay, so just make it about that. And he was absolutely right. And when he said it, I thought, that is just such a brilliant insight into the focus, the clarity, the specialization side of it, because e-commerce is just such a different discipline in AdWords to the normal, what everybody considers a normal sort of lead generation side of things. It's as different as could be.
Gotcha. So that was a very good change of direction, because another book on AdWords, there's already a bunch of, and it's very,
exactly.
How can anyone get excited about that?
Yes, exactly. Well, yeah. So my sort of message to people these days is, well, I only work with e-commerce merchants now, and the reason behind that is very simple. I can show you the money, I can show you where you can stop wasting it, and I can help you make more. And the whole purpose of what I'm doing with any merchant, and not all of them qualify, is that I'm here to give you a free monthly pay rise. Would you like that?
Not hear you. You appear to have just dropped. Oh, there you back.
I'm here to give you a free monthly pay rise, the merchant.
Great. I actually missed what you just said, but I'm going to assume it was good.
Okay. So my message to merchants is, what we do, the only purpose of what we do, and we'll only work with merchants that we know it's going to work for, is to give them a free monthly pay rise.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. Now, this would be, it's a very tight market and a very focused offer, which is if you're using AdWords, we can raise give you a pay raise.
Yep.
How long does it take for someone to, actually, let me ask a dual question. How involved is it to set up your system, and how long does it take to get somebody online with it, and how long before they start seeing financial results, typically?
It varies. all merchants are different and unique. Even if you've got two merchants selling the same products with the same keywords and whatnot, they are still different in their businesses because every other moving part in their business is different. So the interesting thing that I realized, though, was that like so many other agencies out there, you can't do something to improve a situation unless you know what that situation actually is and what it's doing and how it's doing it. So you have to audit a client's account to see what's in place and what's working and what's missing and what should come next. So I've been doing free audits for every client that I think I'm going to work with for many years. Excuse me. And every AdWords agency out there all offers, guess what, a free audit. But what I began to realize was that agencies who were looking inside of an AdWords account at all the campaigns and ad groups and all the moving parts inside there, because they are not looking at revenue, they're looking at all the wrong metrics. So everybody obsesses about things like keyword quality score and click-through rate and cost per click and daily budgets and all those things. And those things are important, but what's most important is the dollars out and the dollars in.
I couldn't agree more. I have always, I'm possibly the least technical person in the internet marketing field, but I've always run my business on that basis.
Absolutely.
And it seems to have gone very well. So I'm really glad. And you, on the other hand, are very technically adept and can do all kinds of things. And I'm glad to see that you've come to the same conclusion.
Yes. I've always been quite straight. As you know, and maybe people who are listening might know a bit of, but I'm from a technical background. I'm an ex-IT manager, and before that, a computer systems engineer, and before that, an electronics engineer. So I deal in a very black and white way with stuff that just it works or it doesn't, and if it doesn't, you fix it. And to fix it, you have to take it to pieces, and then you figure out what the problem is, make some tests, and do some changes, and see what happens, and eventually you can hopefully repair it and make it work again. So in engineering terms, that was physical engineering, with electronics and circuits and stuff. But now I do very similar things, but with campaigns, which are machines which do things and have moving parts, and you adjust this bit and you flick this switch and all of this. But I was so frustrated that we could never see the outcome, the real outcome, the important outcome for people who were buying the clicks and spending the money. So when I accidentally discovered some of those things and had those insights, I realized, well, this is very straightforward now because we can really, truly see what we spend and what we get back, and therefore how to make it work harder for us. So these, I have seen countless campaigns over the years, and even now with e-commerce clients, I still see accounts where they're just not following the money. They're just not tracking the revenue. And there isn't any excuse for it because there's a little bit of technical, script fiddling about with. I don't do that. The webmaster does that. In some cases, for some merchant platforms, it's very straightforward to do that, and you just put a couple of things in and off it goes. So then I could see, well, the very first thing we've got to do with any merchant who we think we might want to work with is show them the money. So the very first thing that I do with any merchant is make sure that their revenue tracking is working. Because if it isn't, I can't do anything to improve his situation.
Right. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. What percentage, in your experience, of businesses actually have that in place?
Well, even in e-commerce, which is very specific and different to lead gen, a very, very small percentage. You just wouldn't believe it. You'd think, my God, all this money that these people are spending, and they're making all the same mistakes, and they're fundamentally just not following the money. The other really intriguing thing about it is, and I was looking at an account just the other day, and it was just completely and utterly messed up. It was another e-commerce situation, but for airline seats, and it was as messed up as you could imagine it could possibly be. In 30 days, they had got their conversion tracking set up that it recorded something like £50 million in revenue, which was utterly ridiculous because it was just all over the place. So there are people and organisations who just don't know the things they should be looking for. When you're following the money and seeing what's coming back, you'll see that so much of it is just completely and utterly wasted. For instance, people go on and on and on and on about remarketing and retargeting, whatever you want to call it. And for lead gen, it absolutely works. But for e-commerce, it often just completely fails.
Really?
The reason for that is because when you look at how long it takes for people who click on an ad and come to a product page and buy the product, 50, 60, 70% plus of these people, excuse me, who click on an ad and come to a product page, buy the product the same day or even the same hour. And we can see that inside the campaigns. So then, well, you know, anything that you do in terms of remarketing to them isn't going to work because they've already bought.
Right, unless it's very, very tailored to the actual purchase they made, maybe offering them a special upgrade or an accessory that would go naturally. But you have to know.
Yeah.
You have to know. But, actually, you're right. I've seen that. I've seen myself buying something and then I'm tracked for months. Somebody trying to sell it to me again, and I'm like, I only needed one of them.
And the thing is that in e-commerce, with physical stuff that comes out of factories, there's a lot of products that are being sold that you only want to buy that one product that one time, and you don't want anything else. So and this is often the case in terms of sort of technology products like computers and laptops and mobile phones and printers and all those kinds of things. Because once you've bought your computer or your laptop, you're pretty much done. You're not going to. You might buy a case perhaps, or some accessory maybe, but a lot of the time it's just that one purchase and you're done. And so remarketing is and we see it, and it's not guesswork or opinion. We see it. We see all this money going out on remarketing, and not a dollar of it comes back. And that intrigued me. I'm like, why is so much money going out on remarketing and nothing happens? Nothing gets sold. We don't see any revenue coming back. And then I looked at the attribution of it, which is to say, how quickly does a ad click convert into a purchase? And like I say, 50, 60, 70% of the time, it's they've bought already. So like you just said, all you're doing is reminding people of you, but they don't need to know because they've already bought what they wanted to buy.
Exactly. Oh my God! And it goes to show what happens when you have the tools, but you don't attach the brain.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
you've just got to track the important stuff and then sort of reverse engineer why it might be behaving that way. And it's kind of like a bit of a detective type thing, trying to figure out from all the clues, forensic analysis of, well, we're just not seeing the money coming back in. Why is that the case? So let's just look at all the data inside, and inside of an AdWords account, it's all over the place. You've got to know what you're looking for and where you can find it, and then try and understand what it means and all of that. So, but that's part of the fun, really.
Well, then, you were talking earlier about your background as an engineer and a systems person. There was a great marketer. I can't remember his name now. He was a catalog marketer, and his background was he was a mining engineer.
Oh, fascinating.
And mining. I always think mining is very much like marketing. You have to find, first you do some exploration and see if there's actually any worthwhile minerals in the ground at all.
Yeah.
Then you have to do your math. Are we close enough to a transport system? What's it, what's it going to cost to get the the metal out of the ground, what's the price of the metal currently in the marketplace, and all those things need to go into the calculation of any serious mining engineer who wants to open a new mine or reopen a closed mine. And it's very, as you say, it's very cut and dry, black and white. You run the numbers, and it's either proceed or pause or stop. It's very different from what a lot of people think in terms of marketing. Marketing certainly has a creative element to it, and it certainly has an element where you are trying to, get into the minds of your customers and all that kind of. But there's that other side, which frankly is probably where the real money is made, which is optimizing all the activity that takes place after somebody has been brought in to your world. Yeah. And I think a lot of companies are missing that. Yeah.
It's very true that. They see all these, it's shiny object syndrome. It's, let's have a play with this and, just try that and see what happens, and they just go after it, but they're not tracking what really matters, which is the eventual outcome. Because, people, I say that, people tell me that AdWords doesn't work, and we hear it all the time, and it's a very common thing. And when you're looking inside of campaigns, you see limited budgets and low bids, and it's all cost center thinking. And this is the thing that totally surrounds so much of what is going on in Google AdWords and paid advertising in general and so forth. It's all cost center thinking. It's like having an insurance policy. You've got to do it. It's a necessary evil. We hate spending the money on this. It's money down the drain or whatever. We don't know what we get back for it, and we can't prove the value. And the thing that I found by not being able to prove my value before I got into this sort of aspect of it was that I'd lose clients, because although I could show that the campaigns were doing well, they were not getting the outcome that they needed, which is more money back than they were putting in, and they just couldn't see that. So that was very frustrating. So I wanted to try and do something about that. You've really got to go after the right things and not get sidetracked by other shiny things, because it is all very, very straightforward. And there's a great program over here. You guys have similar things. We have similar things to each other in the States and the UK. In the UK here, we have a program called Dragon's Den, which I think is a similar thing to, you've got Shark Tank over there.
Yeah, I think as is often the case, you guys invented it, and then we tweaked it for our market and changed the name. But yeah,
and made it far better than we did.
I've watched Dragon's Den. I kind of like it. But yeah, it's more Hollywood in the United States.
Yeah. It's great fun, and it's interesting to see people with businesses who think they've got something come in and pitch and all the rest of it. But anyway, I was watching something on there recently, and one of the guy who was pitching this thing just could not communicate what on earth his thing was all about, and each one of the dragons just couldn't figure it out. And so they're questioning him and asking him for this, that, and the other. And the conversation goes back and forth, and they're getting more and more frustrated because they just can't figure it out. And one of the lady dragons said, what's your business model? What do you spend? What do you get back? And how do you get your customers? And I'm thinking, well, she's just kind of summed it up very quickly and easily and elegantly, which is, what is your business model? Basically, for anybody, which is, how much money did you spend, how much money did you get paid, and how do you get your customers?
Right.
Very, very straightforward.
I want to test an idea on you, since you mentioned the Dragon's Den or Shark Tank. Do you have the show The Profit? It's a U.S. show. I don't know if you've got it in
We don't, Ken. It's really frustrating. I've tried to... There's a few... snippets of it that you can track down on YouTube, but most of the content you can't watch over here in the UK. You'd have to jump through the hoops of getting a VPN and all of that. But basically you can't consume content in the UK that's outside of the copyright area. So no, I've seen bits of it, and it's really, really good. And that guy is just so. But again, he just measures the numbers. He knows the numbers. There was one that I did see, and he got some people doing a restaurant thing, and they were all just killing each other trying to get this thing going. And he just came in and he looked at the price that they were paying for the raw food, and he just said, this should be this amount, not this amount. We need to get that down, and if we do that, then we can make money out of it. And he got on the phone to the supplier, and he said, can you move on this? Instead of 23, can you do it at 19? Oh, yeah, we can manage that. And he turned it around just by looking at the simple numbers like that.
Yeah, it's such a good education. You know, his focus, he has the 3 Ps. He focuses on people, processes, and products, which is really interesting. He doesn't even mention marketing, though marketing is a part of the process and part of the people, and of course a good product, you know, helps marketing a lot. But I want to tell everybody that if they're not watching the profit, I'm not going to say you're going to love the guy. You might like him, and you might not like him. You might not agree with everything he does or how he does it. But the relentless focus on what matters, I think that we've never had anything like it on television. And with the Dragon's Den and Shark Tank, I like that too. We have another one, by the way. I don't know if it's come to the UK yet. Probably not. It's the West Texas Investors Club, and instead of the West Texas it is rural. Like it's beyond your imagination of what rural can be. And they're chewing tobacco and they're doing everything but slopping hogs while they're listening to the but you know what? It's a great thing. And again, I'm not saying these guys are the end all and be all, but they're very good at helping you focus on as you watch them listen to the pitches and analyze the pitches and ask questions and get answers and respond to insufficient answers, as you pointed out. It's just a very good education in business thinking. So and just today I was thinking I'm going to propose to at least the U.S. audience that if they went with Shark Tank, watching Shark Tank and the profit and followed the system, they would be fine in business because the profit does cover operations, which we really don't. And I think that people, processes, products thing is just excellent. It's such a great way to focus on operational matters that really matter. And then the other area that we don't focus on, maybe, and I think maybe we need to be more ruthless, is just to tell people when they, you know, and I try to do it in a nice way. You know, when somebody's doing a business that just makes no sense, or now if they're about to start a business that makes no sense, then I'm pretty ruthless. You know, I really want them to see that, you know, they're going down a blind alley, and these are things that are sort of missing from the internet marketing education world. You know, everybody's idea is a great idea, you know, which just isn't true. And no one ever talks about operations as if operations don't matter, which just isn't true.
No, you make a great point. That's an absolutely great point.
Yeah. Well, speaking
because one of my fairly recent mentors, if you like, he says, and he's absolutely right, and when you think about it, you sort of get it, but at first it might seem a bit counterintuitive, which is to say, he says, ideas are great, but, you know, you can have a great idea. Lots of people have great ideas, but you won't get paid for that. What you'll get, I'm paraphrasing him a little bit, but he says what you'll get paid for is the implementation. You've got to make it happen, you know, and then it's all about, and I think we all kind of get, although we're not all of us perhaps so, you know, real focused on it, but it's all about value. It's all about creating value. It's all about showing your value. And I realized that when I was doing lead gen campaign management, that I couldn't show the business owner the money. I couldn't prove my value, really. And this is what happens in that world of, if you like, the B2B lead gen side of this game, you know, this AdWords game, which is to say agencies who are doing this stuff in the lead gen space, they fundamentally can't prove their value because they don't see the money changing hands. And in fact, they're not in the slightest bit interested usually in that situation at all. All they want to do is sell more clicks for Google and charge the business owner on the basis of percentage of spend, which is completely, doesn't prove its value at all, and it's completely unfair, and they have no vested interest in it. So it's really all about this thing about doing something that proves its value. And then in the e-commerce thing with what I do is then you can, every day that goes by, literally, you can say, we had a return on ad spend of this. And when you are delivering a positive return on ad spend, then what you can do is you can look at other metrics that nobody is really studying that closely. In fact, I've heard it said from another agency that other metrics are actually no use, So I'm talking about something called impression share, which you could say is market share, which is basically how often does your ad show up when people look. And if it's profitable, you want it to show up more often, right? So you can get more business.
Yeah.
So I've heard it said from an agency that impression share is a meaningless metric. And I'm like, God, you're kind of missing something really fundamentally, important there. But hey, if that's what you think about it, then okay.
Well, their model is what's your ad budget, and we want a percentage of it, and we'll throw ads all over the place, and we hope the best for you.
Yeah, absolutely true. And agencies like that, they are all things to all businesses, and they do SEO, and they do PPC, and they do websites, and they do social, and they do this, that, and the other, and they're all things to all businesses, and all they're interested in is what is your monthly budget, because if it's not high enough, then we won't get paid enough. That's got nothing to do with the value. And if you're breathing and you can pay us money, we'll have it. We don't care about the rest.
Yeah. Hey, have you been in contact with Ben Hunt, the web designer?
Not for a while. No. I remember Ben. Yeah, no, I haven't for a while.
Maybe it's because you both are English, but I also think coming from the same place.
It's your fault that I know him, of course, because we all met at one of your London gigs.
Yeah, but the average web designer has the same attitude as the average agency.
Oh, sure.
We'll build something beautiful for you, something you can be proud of. You'll pay us a good fee. And then we'll give you a warm handshake and wish you well on your path in life. And Ben, to his credit, and you to your credit, have said, you know what, that's not good enough.
It's not good enough.
Yeah, and I just want to say it plainly. I admire you and I admire Ben for doing the hard work of creating a system like this, because it would be probably easier in some ways just to go with the flow and take your cut of the ad buy or get your fee for the web design, and it's much harder to say, okay, I'm going to go through the effort of setting up your tracking so that it's useful to you, and then we're going to actually track your spends, and we're going to give you meaningful information. It's a lot more work. But I think it's the future, especially for smart companies. How do you get compensated when you do this? Are you working for fees? Are you working for fees and percentage? How do you get paid?
So we're very specific about the merchants that we can work with, because we have to be able to show them our value. So we have to be able to give them the pay rise that I talked about. So we look carefully at what they're doing and where they're missing opportunities. And for instance, Google shopping campaigns have been around for years, but there's still a lot of merchants not really either doing them or doing them correctly and so forth. And often, if a merchant isn't doing a shopping campaign, we see that as an opportunity straight away. We can give them a 10%, 20%, 30% monthly pay rise just by doing that. That's new money that they haven't seen because they weren't doing it before. So, but I'm compensated on a commission basis on a percentage of actual revenue. So the account has to be profitable, obviously. It's got to be bringing in positive return on ad spend. I like to see at least 3, in other words, 300%, in other words, $3 back for every dollar we spend.
Wow,
sometimes it can be better than that, but that's pretty decent, and that can compensate a merchant, even, if he's got decent margins, then he's doing all right by that. So I say, well, pay me a percentage of the value that I'm creating. I'm like your sales guy, so pay me a commission. I charge a percentage of the gross AdWords campaign revenue each month in arrears, rather than a fixed monthly fee in advance up front, and that's in lead gen and so forth, and how it's mostly done. That's pure speculation because they don't know the value of it. And in fact, so over the past year and a half or so, the trickiest thing for me has been to really produce a set of products which represent what I do. So I have taken a lot of time to productize exactly what I do, and it breaks down into 3 quite straightforward areas, which is basically, the first thing we do is we fix your broken conversion revenue tracking. And that is the only thing that you can buy from us to start with. You can't buy anything else because it's pointless selling you anything else because you don't know what money you're making yet. So we do that conversion revenue tracking rebuild situation. And once we've done that, we are then able to see what is going on. In fact, an agency will look at the account and come in and say, oh, we should change all this and move these over here and put these in there, and have you tried these ads and all that? And I'm like, no, we're not touching anything of your campaigns for the next 30 days whilst we see what's going on in terms of your revenue. So then, and only then, I'll be able to make decisions about what should happen next. So that's the first thing. Having done that, the next product that we sell is, well, we've looked at it now, and we can draw some conclusions, and we know what's bringing in revenue and what isn't, and what's wasting it, and so forth. So now we've got to just rebuild this whole thing. So this is the other thing about e-commerce merchants, is it's all data feed based, which is to say you've got products and they've got titles and descriptions, and that means we know what that product is. If this is an HBXYZ123 printer, that's what it is. We don't have to guess at keywords for e-commerce products because we know what they are, because we know what the product is and how it's described. So we rebuild everything. That's the second piece of what we do. And then we look at that, and we build it in a way so that it's just not going to run off and go all over the place and be wasteful and so forth. We build it quite conservatively with brakes on it, with the handbrake on it, so that it just goes off nice and steady. We build it in a way that is, as well targeted as we can make it. And then excuse me, after another 30 days of that, we can see whether we're ready to really start taking the brakes off and pushing it harder and taking out the bits that don't work and accelerating the bits that do. So we have those products, but to start with, there's only one that you can buy, and that is we've just got to show you the money first and see if you're, if we're good for each other. In fact, it's not just any old e-commerce merchant either. To start with, we're looking at merchants who are actively running AdWords campaigns right now that we can look at and see whether they need fixing up, rather than somebody who's never done it before. So you've got to be an AdWords advertiser, you've got to have 30 days history, and we want to see that you are at least tracking sales conversions, if nothing else, and that you're getting 5 to 10 of those a day, every day, and that your average order value is about $100. And if that's the case, then our commission model is going to pay us as well as it's going to pay you.
Yeah, it's a very logical system. And what's so, talk about a systems engineered flow diagram. It's, are you an e-commerce account? Do you do e-commerce? Yes or no? If no, they're out. And then when you get down to, do you use AdWords or not? Yes or no? If no, there's no point in, it's like Claude Hopkins said, no point in selling shaving cream to the Russians, because in the old days Russians didn't shave. There's just no point. You can't explain why shaving is a good idea. You'll go broke in the process. Same thing with you can't teach somebody AdWords. You could possibly, I don't know if you've had a lot on your plate, and I know you're largely a one-man shop like many of us. What you could do possibly is go to all the AdWords people out there in the world and say, well, one thing you could do is possibly license your knowledge to these companies, or say, look, if you ever have an e-commerce account that you're losing, or you want to close, or you want to do something spectacular with, let's partner.
Well, that's a great point, actually, and the really intriguing thing about this is the partnership aspect, because with this launch at Google coming up next week, I do now have people who are working with me on this. So we are building ourselves a really respectable organization and a products set and all the supporting material that we've been putting together for it and all of that. And the point is that it's not just merchants that we can get a pay rise for, because every merchant who's selling something physical online or even digital products, subscriptions or software or whatever, downloadable stuff, they all have to have at least two fundamental things before that can work. And I call these transaction partners, which is to say you've got to have a cart so you can put your products in it and show up online, and you've got to have a payment processor, because if you don't do that, you can't take people's money off them.
Right.
So you've got to have at least those two very fundamental things in place before you can even trade. There's lots of other, but like the research I've been doing, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of other sorts of platforms who can help you with e-commerce. Sales tax software, ratings and reviews, data feed management, coupons. There's just so many of them. The thing is, though, that if a merchant starts to get successful with these campaigns and he spends more on them and gets more revenue and he's making more money, which is what he wants, then his payment gateway is processing more transactions. Therefore, they are actually getting more money as well at the same time. So your authorized.net, your PayPal, your 2Checkout, your Stripe, your whatever, they charge, 20 cents a transaction and 1.9% or whatever. So the more money that goes to the merchant goes through the payment gateway, they get paid more money as well. So they are actually getting a pay rise just like the merchant does. Okay. And I can look at one of my merchants, and the thing about this is the most important part about working with a partner in the distribution side of things is simply understanding how he gets paid, and then knowing how you can give him a pay rise. Because if he's got hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of merchant customers, which many of the big payment gateways do, think about PayPal, then for all the merchants that you give a pay rise, the payment processor's platform's getting a pay rise at the same time. That one of my merchants, in a period of time that I've done a graph over, gave authorized.net over $40,000 in commission.
Wow. So, yeah. So now, again, I know you can't be in all places at all times. Have you had any conversations with the payment processors?
Not yet. We will.
Yeah. No. That's really perfect. And again, it's just so easy because they're all e-commerce people, and now it's a question of who uses AdWords. And wow.
We're just getting all our sort of ducks in a row, if you like. We're getting all our core material put together so that if somebody says, what about this, we just give them a PDF. Or somebody says, what about that, you just send them to a web page or whatever, There's years of stuff in there that all just, it's all coming out. It's not finished yet, and it'll never completely finish, it'll be updated and whatnot, but the really fundamental important parts of it, like the products and other core material that we need to have, that's all coming together. So at that point, we'll then be able to, if somebody's in one of these events, and Google have said to us, would you do more? And we'd be like, hell yeah, we'll do them regularly with you. If you want us to do them, fine. If it goes well, then yeah, absolutely, bring it on. We'll do more. So we want to have those kinds of conversations with potential partner platforms in the distribution channel side of things. We can't go to authorized.net, for instance, right now and say, would you like to get a free pay rise by giving your merchants a free pay rise, and then them turn around and say, sounds great to us, here, have 1,000 clients. And we'd be like, well, we're not really quite ready to handle that just yet. So we're having to pace ourselves, get ourselves steadily getting clients on board, bringing them in and getting them going and making the case studies out of them, and really getting to a very solid foundation before we can start reaching out into the distribution side of things.
Yeah, no, I can totally see the demand could easily swamp your supply.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations. And sorry, can I interrupt you? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wonder if the part where you're putting people's basically house in order, is that something that is highly technical? Or I wonder if wonder how. The analysis, I think, and the advisory. That's pretty elevated stuff. But the
actually,
actual,
no. It has to. It always has to start with showing them the money, and that is really a very straightforward thing to do. So, what, as you mentioned earlier, I published the book a while ago. It's out of date. It needs updating. That will be done. I realised that it's a huge book and it needs breaking down into pieces, and that was really the part of the idea of, well, let's look at the conversion tracking bit first. Let's make sure that works, because that's the fundamental piece of it all. That's where we actually see the money changing hands. That is a book. So then there's the next bit, which is, okay, how do we stop wasting money? Now we know where the money is actually going. And that's the rebuild bit, and that's another book. And then there's the bit which is okay, how do we drive this thing harder now, accelerate it all? That's the third book in the thing. So broken the main big book out into at least 3 pieces in support of the products that we've got. So, but what I do is we've compiled the material. It's not up online yet, but it will be up online. It will be a standalone website where you can go and you can read how to rebuild your conversion tracking to track revenue. And so you can find that out, and if you want to go and do it for yourself, you can, and off you go, and fine. But that's the first bit. That's the free gift to anybody who's in e-commerce who wants to do this, is, well, okay, just go and look at it like this, turn these columns on, and set it all up like this, and you're good to go. And if you need help with that, fine, you can pay us to do it. If you want to do it yourself, great. But it's all about letting people come into our situation by giving them something really valuable that they can take and run with if they're so inclined, or if it's, I haven't got the time for this, it's too technical, and anyway, when it's done, you've still got to do all the rest of it, and we can't do that, so, and it just leads them into our thing. And the point behind it all is, it's very simple and straightforward, like we talked about, which is basically you put money in, you get more money back. Do you want that? Does that make sense? And right. You either get that and you want to be involved with it, or you don't, so you don't get it, and you're not geared up for it, and so okay, well, it's pointless taking it any further.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's you've got a world of opportunity in front of you. It's just a matter of figuring out the smartest way to roll it out.
Prioritization. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. But what we were very interested to do, though, and this is why when my new Google agency manager got in touch, and I just started telling her all the ways we were looking at things and doing things differently and so forth, and why she was so interested in it, was that the most wealthy company in the world is Google. They're wealthier than Apple, IBM, AT&T, Verizon, and all the rest of it. There was a top 10 came out not long ago, and they're the world's wealthiest company. But they are not an infinitely resourced company. They have bottlenecks and problems and issues and challenges just like any other organization. And the interesting thing was when I was talking with Melissa, my agency manager there, because she's from an agency, she gets that people do not trust Google.
Right.
You don't. No, nobody trusts Google. and
it's hard for Google to wrap their mind around that reality.
I think, they're an amazing company, Google, but they're full of contradictions and paradoxes. They are born out of geeky engineering math people, and I'm a geeky engineer, and I've read all the books, and I relate to them a lot, and they're very interesting organisation, but they have this, and a lot of what we've talked about on this call here, Ken, is coming out in the presentation that we'll be doing next week, is that, well, just like merchants, Google have the same problem, which is to say merchants and any other business wants to grow their business. And Google want to grow their business. Now, how do Google grow their business? They sell more clicks, because that's what makes them all the money.
Gotcha.
The problem that they've got is that most people don't want to buy these clicks, the ones that Google want to sell more of. And why is that? Because they don't know what they're worth. They don't know the value of them. So if you can prove the value of the clicks, people will want to buy more of them. And then guess what? Everybody wins, because the merchants get a pay rise and Google get to sell more clicks and they get a pay rise at the same time.
Wow. Well, I wish I could be a fly on the wall at that event. I wonder, can you invite guests? Could you invite Ben to come?
That's an absolutely fantastic point. I will get on to Ben straight away.
That's the best, most streamlined, rather than give them a whole thing, just say, I'm doing a presentation at Google, and I thought you might be interested, end of story.
Absolutely right. Yeah, we've reached out to various people, and we've got most of the seats gone now, but Ben is an absolutely great candidate. You know how it is, though. I mean, we're so close to the people and contacts that we know. Often we just don't realize, oh, shit, why didn't I? Oh, did I say that? Shocked.
Okay.
Why didn't I think about inviting such and such a person? You're right, yes, I'll get an email off to Ben right away.
That's why we have conversations, so we can all realize things that we've already knew but forgotten.
That's so true, yeah.
Well, David, this has just been another great call. Obviously, anybody who's doing e-commerce with AdWords needs to get in touch with David while you still can, because I have a feeling he's going to be very busy.
Yes.
But we've also covered just a lot of principles that apply to just almost anything that you're doing, online or off. Which is you've got to measure, and if measurement is the beginning of all progress. And you've played this out in the e-commerce space. I hope that someday you'll be invited to present at that conference in Chicago.
We'll be working on that, Ken, believe me.
Yeah, they really, there's nothing more important to them than what you're doing, and they just may not realize it yet. And I think you'll also meet a lot of potential marketing partners inside the U.S., which could be great. But anyway, David Rockwell, thank you so much for sharing these exciting developments and showing us how you've evolved.
Been a pleasure, Ken. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.